Megan said, "You can't bring self doubt to your team. They have to believe in you." Sounds inspiring, right? But when you peel back the polished PR and look at it through the lens of power, perception, and control, it tells a different story. In this video, we are going to look through a People magazine article that talks about the latest episode of Megan's podcast to drop today. And we're going to look at how she describes her leadership style. I'm very excited about this because most of the time when we talk about Megan, we talk about her in a romantic setting and maybe in a familial and friendship setting. But this time, we're going to look at how these behaviors turn out when you work with these types of characters, and especially when they are your leadership. We're going to decode the deeper dynamics of what Megan said and what's hidden. Because when leaders curate confidence while suppressing dissent, it's not just bad leadership, it's emotional manipulation. And when that same leader has been accused of bullying Steph allegedly, these polished quotes start to look less like empowerment and more like image laundering. We're digging into the psychology behind it with real world scenarios you may recognize, and we're going to expose the tactics behind the mask. But before we begin, here's the intro. Welcome to Revealing the Narc. Join me as I highlight narcissistic traits in celebrities and public figures. Everything here is in my opinion and not professional advice. If you enjoy the analysis, please like and subscribe. This article was just released today, this morning, in People magazine. As I was reading through the article, I saw that there's three main things that Megan is lacking in her leadership. The first is collaborative transparency. The second is internal confidence. And the third is empowerment of others. And we're going to get into each of these three things. I'm going to show you how we see it and the evidence that's in this article that supports her lacking these leadership qualities. And then I'm going to go through examples. And when you add the potential of bullying happening behind the scenes, it really frames this in a new light. So let's get into all of that. I'm also going to give you examples of what these things look like in a healthy team, in teams that are lacking the particular quality, and then finally in teams that are lacking the quality and they are in a bullying environment. So let's get into the article. It's titled, "Meghan Markle Admits to Having Self-Doubt Over Launching Lifestyle Brand as Ever After Being Under a Microscope." I'm going to highlight three specific statements that are made in this article and talk about those. We don't need to go through the whole thing. So the first one is this quote. It says, "You can't bring self-doubt to your team that's junior to you. They have to believe in what you're creating and the vision and how you hold the line," she continued. "But you still have to be able to have someone you can go to be human and say, 'I don't know. Can you just tell me that this makes sense?'" So, what she said, you can't bring self doubt to your team that's junior to you. She is telling us that she views leadership as a performance. Confidence must be projected, not shared. Her team isn't seen as collaborators who can help navigate doubt, but as an audience she has to impress. And I've mentioned this before with Megan and other people with narcissistic tendencies. They are competitors and not collaborators. So it's not surprising that she doesn't see her team as a group of collaborators. So, why does this matter? Real leadership includes honest communication. Teams trust leaders who are authentic and not robotic. Hiding vulnerability breeds distance and not respect. And now let's factor in with if there's bullying going on allegedly, right? So the original framing of this is she hides this self-doubt to protect her junior team. But if there is bullying happening, that's not protection, it's control. Hiding doubt while demanding loyalty creates a one-sided emotional dynamic where only the leader's image matters. Staff are emotionally silenced while being expected to perform unwavering belief. This isn't about shielding others. It's about denying them access to real power while managing their perception through a curated version of confidence. It's a classic narcissistic tactic. Curate perfection while others walk on eggshells. So, I'm going to give you three different examples of how this could play out. In the first one, we're going to talk about it being a healthy leadership. The second one will be where there's lacking transparency, but there is no bullying. And the final one will be lacking transparency and bullying. So the first one, you have a junior team member who asks why the product rollout is delayed. The leader would say, "Great question. We're reworking a few features based on beta feedback. It's a slight delay, but the improvements will be worth it. I'll share updates every Friday so everyone's looped in." And the impact of this, the team feels respected, informed, and trusted. There are things to look forward to. The leader is promising, "I'll share updates with you every Friday." So you don't feel like you're out of the loop. Now, let's go into a situation where there's lacking transparency. The same question is asked, and the leader says, "It's just a timing issue. Don't worry about it." The leader isn't being rude, but they're gatekeeping information. This causes the team to feel unsure, maybe excluded, but not psychologically unsafe. And the same thing in a bullying environment, the response would be in a cold manner. "You don't need to know that. Focus on your own job." And then later, that employee that asked the question is excluded from meetings. This team member feels humiliated, this team member feels humiliated and paranoid. Information becomes a tool for control. You guys, my dog has zoomies right now, so I apologize if you hear her running in the background or squeaking her toys or whatever, but oh my gosh, she's so cute. Eh, there you go. There's the squeaking. Oh my goodness. Aurora. Let's go to the second quote I wanted to highlight. It says, well, Megan says, "Netflix coming on as my business partner is huge. Just having a global powerhouse that believed in me and the site selling out in the first 45 minutes of launch, everything, every single piece that we had been working on," she said, "that told me that customers, people believed in me and this vision. That's all you really want as a founder. That becomes your proof point that those late nights and the midnight musings are worth it." This reveals a lot. It reveals that she is lacking in internal confidence. Her confidence hinges on outside validation, brand deals, sales metrics, and public perception. There's no mention of trusting her own image. A leader who only feels secure when things go well creates instability. Teams sense that insecurity and they mirror it. True confidence isn't built on applause, it's built on purpose. So, what happens when you lack internal confidence and there is an environment of bullying that's going on? You end up with narcissistic fragility. So, originally, and what we see here is she needs external validation to feel secure. And if you add bullying on top of that, that need for validation may be aggressively enforced. When leaders are fragile and ego driven, any perceived challenge, even healthy feedback, can trigger retaliation, scapegoating, or emotional punishment. Instead of being self aware, the leader becomes a destabilizing force. Team members may feel responsible for managing the leader's emotions while being punished for not believing hard enough. So, how does this look like in the three scenarios that we talked about before? And the situation we're looking at is a teammate gently suggests the brand's tone may come across as too self promotional. In a healthy leadership, the leader could say, "Interesting. Can you show me what you're seeing? Let's compare notes." This employee in this environment, feedback is welcomed. The leader's identity isn't threatened by constructive input. Now, if there's lacking internal confidence but no bullying, the leader would respond, I think it reads fine, honestly." Then they change the subject. The leader is fragile but not retaliatory. The feedback hits a wall but doesn't cause harm. And finally, if there's bullying involved, the leader would say, "Wow, Noted. Noted. Later, the employee is given less visibility and told they're not aligned with the vision of the company. The retaliation here is covert. The employee learns, stay silent, or pay the price. And the third thing that from this article I can see that Megan is lacking in her leadership is empowerment of others. And we can go back to that first quote that I showed you originally, where it says, "You can't bring self doubt to your team. They have to believe in you." What this shows is that her team's value is framed as supporting her image. They're not shown as co creators with their own strength. They exist to reinforce her role as the visionary. Empowering leaders uplift others, create shared ownership, and welcome input. When leadership becomes a solo spotlight, the team gets left in the dark. And what happens if now you add bullying into the mix? This lacking of empowerment in others is replaced with subjugation and image policing. So the original is the team is there to support her vision. But if bullying is occurring, staff aren't just not empowered, they're actively diminished, micromanaged, or belittled. Their job becomes emotional labor, managing optics, keeping the peace, and protecting the leader's ego. In this environment, empowerment is replaced with survival. Team members may develop trauma responses, fawn, freeze, etc., in response to subtle or this overt mistreatment, all while the public sees a curated, glossy brand image. So let's look at the third scenario and how this would look like in those three different environments. The scenario is a junior team member pitches a new social media idea that goes viral. In healthy leadership, the leader says, "Brilliant, let's feature you in our next team highlight. You knocked it out of the park." In this scenario, ownership is shared and the team member feels valued and motivated. Now, what happens if there's an environment that's lacking in empowerment, but there's no bullying that's happening? The leader would respond to this and say, "We had a great idea come through and implemented it. No name is mentioned." The junior member now feels invisible, but not attacked. It's disappointing, but it is a little more tolerable. Now, how does this look? The same thing in a bullying environment. The leader says, "This was my concept from the start. I looped the team in for execution." Later, they warn the employee, "Don't go around trying to get credit. It's not a good look." This junior employee feels erased and intimidated. Others notice and go quiet too. So essentially, with this article, I see three things that Megan is lacking in her leadership style: collaborative transparency, internal confidence, and a lack of empowering others. There's one more thing I want to talk about. Early on in this article, it's mentioned that she felt she's under a microscope in the public spotlight. And if you combine this with needing someone to validate her, it takes on a very different tone. If bullying is happening, it becomes a form of image laundering, framing herself as vulnerable and noble while suppressing and potentially harming those beneath her. Image laundering is when someone, often a public figure or brand, strategically uses carefully crafted messaging, associations, or emotional narratives to cleanse or disguise problematic behavior, patterns, or reputations. It's like PR level cleaning up, not of a mess, but of perception. It borrows its name from money laundering, where illicit funds are cleaned to look legitimate. In image laundering, a damaged or controversial reputation is cleaned to look wholesome, heroic, or relatable. Image laundering often involves five different things. The first is strategic vulnerability. This could be someone saying, "I've been through so much." This statement becomes the shield, and it ignores the trail of harm left behind. The story centers on their pain and not their impact. The second is emotional rebranding. The narrative goes from "that was toxic behavior" to "that made me who I am." It's not accountability, it's repackaging. Bullies become survivors, critics become haters. The third is high status associations. So you surround yourself with high ranking people, Oprah, Netflix, All of this isn't accidental, it's reputation camouflage, hoping that this borrowed credibility will override bad behavior. The fourth is controlled narrative. Selective interviews, podcast appearances, and handpicked platforms mean only one version of the story gets told, theirs. And the people that they've harmed, they're often silenced. And finally, there's performative allyship, public support for social justice, feminism, or mental health, while treating their own teams poorly behind the scenes, is virtue signaling, not values. In Megan's case, her statements about self doubt, scrutiny, and needing support can be viewed as image laundering because they're being used to soften and distract from allegations of bullying and toxic leadership. She reframes herself as a vulnerable founder under attack rather than someone accused of mistreating staff. That shift from perpetrator to misunderstood visionary is the laundering. It's harmful because it distorts reality and inverts power dynamics, turning the focus away from the people who may have been harmed onto the curated struggle of the person who caused the harm. It's also emotionally manipulative. It preys on the public's empathy while evading accountability. What we're seeing isn't just branding, it's emotional narrative control. Because when someone accused of mistreating others suddenly rebrands themselves as a misunderstood visionary while delivering curated quotes about self doubt, loyalty, and leadership, that's not clarity. That's distortion. That's power flipping. And for anyone who's ever worked under a narcissistic boss or lived under emotional manipulation, you can feel it, you can hear it, you can't unsee it. So let's keep questioning what we're told. Let's keep decoding what's presented and give voice to what's often erased. I'm curious to know what you all think about this. Please drop your thoughts in the comments. Feel free to share stories if you're comfortable. If this was interesting to you, please like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you'll know every time I drop a new video. I want to thank you all so much for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.